What does food mean to you as an immigrant? For me, it means home. It means it's a sign of where I'm from, and it's where I hold on to my identity. And for Izunna, it's the same. But I think one thing I found interesting in all he talks about is how I never thought about it that way. But he says, when you move, you don't eat swallow immediately. I mean, because I was lucky. I moved. I stayed in a friend's place, so I ate swallow at some point. Swallow means it's food you make with flour. So it's like, I don't know how to explain it if you're not from Nigeria, to be honest. But we just call it swallow. Like you take gari, cassava, flour, mix it with hot water, and you turn it with a stick, like a turning stick, and it turns into like a paste, semi-thick paste that you can now dip in soups and eat. And the first time when you leave the country, if you've not eaten it for a while, the first time you eat it, you feel alive. Honestly, you do feel alive. But let's listen to Izunna's story, because I think it's a pretty interesting one about how food defines who we are. Were you always cooking back home in Nigeria?
Half and half. I usually answer that question. It's like, yeah, when I was living on my own, I was cooking in Nigeria. But whenever I was at home, I wasn't really doing much cooking, except when I craved something and I wanted to make it myself. When I had to make something for my parents too as well, because they trusted me to, whenever my dad was around, he trusted me to make him lunch. So, yeah, that was just it.
So, if you think about like who you are, because it feels like because I know we're all Nigerians, like so,
Yes.
and I know how Nigerian boys are raised. If you know how to cook, it's because you're probably very interested in cooking and all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But it's still something that we have to make extra effort to do just because
Yes.
of our culture.
Yeah.
So, but the way you've come here, you've taken to it, like, so this is like a question and a statement, and I'd like you to respond to it, which is basically, it almost feels to me like you're basically saying, I am not going to let go of my heritage, and this food is one way in which I hold on to the person that I am. Is that what's happening there?
Absolutely. I even self, I can give you a bit of a back, to where it started. Really, it was when I was a student in the UK, and obviously that was my first time living abroad. So in the UK, I came as an under 18. I was 17 when I came. So they said I couldn't, by their laws, I couldn't stay on my own. I had to live with a host family. So this host family I was living with was a British single man. And most of what I was eating was just, unseasoned chicken. It wasn't that season, but yeah. It was like almost the year I stayed. I was eating all sorts of things that, I'll have to sneak behind and go and season it. So when I had the chance to live on my own, I felt like there was that hunger to replace lost years of Nigerian food or Nigerian flavors. And I was cooking and I was, really trying everything I could to make sure that my food were loaded with the, flavors I was very familiar with. At the time, I also had my sister who was in another part of the UK who I used to go and visit then. And I would say my sister was very instrumental in the cooking part because one thing we used to do was my sister always trusted me to taste her cooking and give her feedback or, taste it and be, what did you use? I would notice a flavor. If there was something different, I would notice it. My other brothers would probably not notice it. Their own is just the food is good, the food is good. But if she gives me, I would notice that there's something, she played around with something here. So that was the thing. So we used to kind of cook together and we just had this aspiration for good food or nice tasting food, really. So that was where it started. So as much as I went ahead, everything that I was tasting, even in that house, there were aspects of it I liked. There were some aspects of, Western food I liked. But I also felt there were things missing in them, which was now where I was now bringing those Nigerian flavors into those Western cuisine-ish, So um, if I'm making glazed chicken, for example, I'm adding Maggi, I'm adding this one, I'm adding, or I might just think, oh, mashed potatoes actually really goes well with Cameroon pepper.
Are you serious?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. The time I made it, I had someone over to try it. And when she ate it, she said she doesn't usually like mashed potatoes. But this is the first one she actually really likes.
Are you serious?
Because every time I eat mashed potatoes, I just feel like there's something missing. There's just a layer of flavor that could just announce itself. And that was Cameroon pepper for me. So when I threw it in, I knew it was a match. Honestly, honestly, it brings the flavor, it flavors and brings the spiciness, like the heat.
I'm
So
gonna have to try that because like I
yeah.
agree with you. So I like mashed potatoes a lot, but I just know that you know you my wife says that I know how to taste food, but I don't know how to cook. So I'm the worst person. I don't know how to cook, but I like good food. So
Yes.
you just know that this thing could actually get much better than it currently is.
Yeah.
Like this is a good meal, but if you experimented with
Something.
it a bit more, you could
Yeah.
take it somewhere that you'd be
You
like,
could take somewhere. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And that's it with me with food. And the way I see it sometimes, I see it like black pepper and Cameroon pepper are a bit interchangeable. Because black pepper brings its own flavor, but it doesn't bring heat. And Cameroon pepper brings its own flavor and it also brings heat. So in sometimes it's not everywhere. Sometimes I really like black pepper as it is, but I feel like there's some dishes, especially savory dishes that are a bit salty or something. Cameroon pepper sometimes really works in them. Yeah. So I'm an ambassador for Cameroon pepper.
so staying on that a bit is so for me is so do you struggle with how when you start moving food over from Nigeria, so when you think of Nigerian meals, and now
Yeah.
you're in Canada, you're cooking in a Canadian kitchen, so it's
Yeah.
a Canadian market. I mean, yeah, I know there's the African store, but it's
Yeah.
still a bit different. We don't get things like the way we get them back home. Like, how do you do that switch and find things like in the Canadian spice market, for example, and then use that to say, I'm going to use this to replicate the flavor I know back home? Like, how do you do that? Because
Okay.
that for me is a struggle.
Yes. It takes a lot of risk taking and making mistakes. I would give you exactly every of my thing has like some kind of story behind it, or how I ended up in this situation. So, for example, I'll give you curry powder.
Yes,
The ones you
yes.
find here are not the ones we're used to,
Oh yeah.
right? So if you go and buy curry powder from Walmart, a lot of Nigerians want to go and buy curry powder from Walmart and use it. They say, oh, they don't like curry powder. Like that's not the one we are used to. So how do I find it? I go to the Caribbean department, Jamaican curry powder. It's very similar to the one we use. So it took me a bit of experimenting or risk taking. Okay, let me try this. Maybe it might just work. And then I taste it and it's like, this works. This is how I find it. But also in the spices section, a lot of our spices can also still be found here. I'm talking about bay leaves, thyme,
Yeah.
um, you know, maybe crushed chili or dried chili. Some of these things, it just takes you to go into maybe the Indian section. That's where you find black eyed peas, which is beans.
Mm-hmm.
If you go into some parts of the uh maybe Chinese food area, that's where you find chicken stock that's very similar to ours. You'll find soy sauce, which is like the liquid Maggi seasoning too as well. Very similar. Or you see the Maggi one too. Things like that. So it just takes a bit of just ladies have this thing where they just go to stores, not to exactly shop, but just to find. So they
Mm.
just that's why if you go to a girl's house, that's why you realize that she has a egg. What is it called? Like when you're boiling egg, she'll put it inside, and you can tell her how far that egg has boiled. Right? These simple gadgets. When you go to a girl's, you see these things, and you're wondering, where did you find these things? How did you know these things exist? I didn't even know this exists. Go to their bathrooms, you're seeing, a radio speaker or something like just the latest, fanciest things, really. Because they go into these stores, they spend time, they just choose a time. Their target is not grocery shopping or anything. They just go there, look around, and see what they find. And that's actually how you can extend that to spices or cooking. Because sometimes you go and you just find a sauce, a chili ketchup, and you're like, let me try this. And you buy it and you try it. It takes a lot of experimenting, really, but that's how you just build, let's say, your flavor profile in a way, and you are able to replace some of these things. And for example, our fresh pepper is, it's very, you can replace it with a habanero. Really, that's what we all use here for, you know,
Oh, interesting.
yeah, the
I'm
orange
the
one
worst
now.
person ever, but
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah, the orange pepper. Yeah, that's what we use here as fresh pepper because they're very similar. So, you know, that's really it. It just take some time, go to those stores, those grocery stores, and spend time and see what you can find. And you'll surprise yourself. Before you know, you'll be looking around and you have stuff.
Yeah, because I think like when we first moved here, I think one of the things I struggled with again, like just like you, is that seasoning. Like you
Mm,
eat out and you're like, "Hmm, no, 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 too flat, or just bland and all that.
yeah,
Like so I struggle to eat out. I mean, I eat out every now and then, but I find that like you're right about the Jamaican food. Vietnamese food is also a bit close to us, and the sauce is a bit similar
yeah. They
in
make sure they are stock or something. Is there's flavor.
yes,
Yeah, it's not
yes,
always bland. So I always pay attention to cultures who like who season their food. Because that's where you might find some similar taste profiles, and then you now realize that okay, this is interchangeable. Or you taste something at a restaurant and you taste a very familiar taste, and then you go online to go and look at the recipe, and you start trying to narrow down what was that flavor I
Mhm.
tasted. By the time you look at it, and you're like, okay, it's not the lemon. Definitely wasn't the lemon. Definitely wasn't this
No,
thing.
it
Yeah,
can't
and then
be.
you now have a few, maybe 3 or 4 seasonings they use there that you're like, okay, which one could it be? And yeah, that's one thing I also do, which is I shouldn't reveal this. That sometimes when I go to my friend's house, I open their spice cabinet and I start looking at the things I'm not familiar with to try it.
Ross, you are born to do this. I beg. I don't see myself ever doing that. Like you are born to do
And I encourage people, if you visit me and you say you want to go through my spice to taste what you might like, feel free,
Yeah,
100%. Because that's, if you want to go into my fridge and taste my sauces to see which one you'd like, feel absolutely free. Is it umami sauce? Is it Japanese barbecue sauce you want? In fact, I'll be the one to encourage you to try it because I know you might really like it because I like it. So this
yeah,
is just how it works for me, really. Yeah, just experimenting
yeah.
and
That's
trying.
interesting. Yeah. Now, do you have like any meal that is like a love letter to home that you make? You know how whenever you miss home, is there like a meal you cook? Like, okay, I miss home now. I'm going to cook this because that reminds me of mom and dad or home times. Is there any meal like that?
I mean, there are a couple actually, so it's very hard to answer that question but I think the first base I would answer you is soups for sure. I think any soup can really do it for me, but the soups I usually use to get a taste of home is usually edikai corn, akazu soup or okazi as some
Yeah,
other,
okazi,
yeah,
yeah.
other call it, because that's our native soup, right? So whenever I make it and I taste it, it just reminds me of our community meeting or our tribesmen meeting. Yeah, it's our thing. So whenever we had those meetings, that soup was always there. So that's one of them. But I think edikaikon was my favorite soup growing up. So if I ever wanted to get a real taste of like home, even though it wasn't indigenous to us, but yeah,
Yeah.
that's one of my go-to. So you see, anything does it for me. It just makes me feel alive. You know, I'll tell you. I'll tell you when I first went to the UK, when I first arrived in the UK, for like 3 months, I went without eating any swallow, and I knew there was something wrong. In my
Of
body and in
course.
my soul, my body and my soul, there was something wrong. There was absolutely something wrong. So I remember the first, taking a swallow, like how
How you felt?
I came alive. I felt alive again. It felt like something had come back. I promise you, it felt like something had come back. I will never forget that feeling. It's like my life was restored. My life became restored. It just came back to me immediately. And I remember Chris Clown made a skit like that. Like a couple months later, I remember watching it. Like it was a very relatable diaspora
Theme.
struggle. First time you eat swallow after how long living abroad. Like you just know, you're now yourself again. So yeah, that was it for me really, for sure.
So I was gonna
So,
ask you, because you find I believe that food is culture. Like food is culture. That's I believe
Yeah.
that strongly. But again, sometimes on Twitter or across the food sphere, you see people talking a bit about appropriation and all those things. And I'm curious, like, how do you balance between being authentic and adapting? I mean, like, how do you balance that? So say, I was originally Nigerian, but now I'm a global citizen. But how do you make that? How do you keep that the being authentic to who you are, but also adapting to the new environment you find yourself? Because you're in Canada right now, so which means that somehow every now and then, and you've talked about it already, you will fuse meals together. You will create something new. You will mix Canadian recipes and Nigerian recipes. But do you ever think about it from when I fuse these meals, is it predominantly Nigerian or is it predominantly Canadian or is it a mix of both and it's just something that is on its own? Like, do you ever think about that?
Um. Sorry, one second. Yes, absolutely. I think what you've just raised is something that you know usually crosses my mind. In terms of, oh, should I keep things authentic or should I, But I feel like food has really gone past that stage. Just like music, everybody's fusioning something with something. Um, and the world is becoming more connected
Yeah.
more than ever. Through marriage, through food, through music, through language, through everything. So I feel like Nigeria has so much to offer, or the Nigerian flavors has so much to offer. And there's no way you're going to familiarize those flavors to people just being plainly authentic. You can do it, but we've been doing it for years. And, you know, we haven't really
Yes. I get.
exported our flavors, right? Um, but one thing about fusion is that both parties benefit. You know, uh, I will go more into detail a bit about that. But what I was just trying to say here is that it's not a bad thing, and those who keep it authentic can keep it authentic. There are so many creators keeping it authentic, and that's fantastic for the ecosystem.
Mhm.
But we also need creators, Nigerian creators, especially those who now have that exposure, that have the authentic side to them, and that exposed side that can bring it and bring it balance. And that's how I see it. So, for example, I'm doing a fusion of Nigerian and Japanese flavors. There are places where I see a bridge between them. And why I say both parties benefit is because Asians in general can taste it. Even everybody else can taste it and taste, oh, they be familiar to Japanese flavor here. But I've brought forward the Nigerian flavor into the mix.
Yeah.
And it's now something new, right? I've bridged in something they're familiar with. Same for the Nigerians who might not be familiar with Japanese taste profile. They will taste that, they will try something like that. And it's a new taste profile with something they're already familiar with.
Mhm. Mhm.
So it's just like I see food so similar to like music. I always make that parallel every time because I'm very big on both. Actually, I don't make music, but I'm a very big music consumer. I have a vinyl player here, so yeah,
Nice.
yeah. I have a records collection.
Oh no,
Uh,
mine is back home in Nigeria. I was talking to my brother the other day about finding a way to kind of ship it across. It's just that I might have to now pay taxes and duty on
yeah,
it,
yeah.
yeah, to bring it in.
I beg.
Because I've been here 4 years now, so I can't bring in anything and say, oh, I'm just a
Right.
newcomer to the country
Oh,
again.
okay. Yeah, but yeah, as I was saying, so authenticity is good. You can keep things authentic, or you can actually respect how authentic things are. But it shouldn't limit um exploration of new things. Like for example, if Nigerians want to be very tough on authenticity and appropriation, or don't mix, this is not this food, don't call it this food, call it something new. Nigerians do often do that, especially
Yeah.
people protecting their culture. And I'm like, I never really forced you to choose that this is how to make it. And I never even admitted this is how to make it. This is just how I make it. and I'm presenting something new, I always present as something new, most likely inspired by this, or I call it this. This is what it is. Really, I have to accredit where this dish is, but
Yeah.
I'm accompanying it with something new now. You understand? Um, on the topic of that as well, one other thing I bring up is shawarma. Shawarma is Middle Eastern. It's
Yes.
Lebanese. What we call shawarma, and we call it shawarma. The exact name they call it.
And
It's
it's
not like
we've changed it. And we've
similar is the
changed it.
bread. It's similar as the bread. Everything else we've changed the content inside, but we maintain. So when I made a shawarma recipe, I had to make it very clear that this was not the authentic shawarma. This is not the Middle Eastern one. This is a Nigerian one. I did not face any kind of backlash from the international, anybody coming to say, "But this is not shawarma. This is something else," because I made that clear. So Nigerians would love it. We only see it with something we're familiar with, but uh, it's like we have to remind Nigerians that a lot of our food is not even exactly authentic like that. A lot of our food was brought in through trade. You know, a
This
lot
thing,
of
you see
flavor profiles were brought in through trade.
this thing you say.
Curry, thyme, all those things were not indigenous to us. You understand? They brought it. These were flavors that were brought in during different eras of trade. So, there's even the one about cassava too. Cassava is not indigenous. It's from South America.
Are you
Yes.
serious? I didn't know.
100%. Yes. Even Gary,
Wait,
I
wait, wait, wait.
cannot
Don't spoil my childhood.
no,
Gary
I'm
is
not
not a
go what's the name in Brazil? They have a name for it in Brazil. I
what
kid you
the
not. There is so much about our food that we protect with all might and fight and fierceness that I'm just like, do you people know?
where it's coming
Do
from.
you know that it's not even the way Nigerians will fight people for using stockfish in a different way? And I'm asking,
Yeah, that was Norwegian or something, I
it's
believe,
from
right?
Norway, but people say that is stockfish, and that's not how you cook. Which other one did I see online? People, which one did I see online? And I think Nigerians please don't fight to protect this. This is not your own. It's not our own. It is not our own. Please don't embarrass me, please.
Is that gatekeeping culture? And I think it's
Hmm.
not just a Nigerian, I think it's a global
It's
problem
a
actually.
global
And
thing, honestly. Yes.
yeah, and you're so I like how you started it with the point about like it's okay to be authentic. But if you think about what's going on with the world now, the world is so interconnected that things are going to everly just keep changing,
Mixing. Yeah.
fusions, all those things. So when you come out and be like, no, this is not how to do it. No, it's better you say this is not how I would do it. And that's okay because that's not how you would do it. But I come at it from a different way. So for example, I'm in Canada right now. And yes, I'll learn the Canadian things, but there are things that Canada will do, and I'll be like, oh no, I'll do it differently because of how I was raised, of
Hmm.
how I see the world. But that's the beauty of the world itself. Like so
Yes.
it's it's
Yeah.
interesting when I see that those battles, which is why I said I was gonna ask Izunna this
Yeah, yeah.
question. Because
Because
I know
about this,
I've seen you at the forefront of some of them where you're like, when you're going at people, I'm like, this
yeah,
boy
you
likes
know what?
trouble.
I need to reduce the way I chat because sometimes it just feels like, oh, you're bigger than this, but I can't rest because one thing about these things, when you feel sometimes people are wrong about something and you want to ignore it, your body's teaching you because I know I can
I
prove you
know.
wrong. I can't. So it's if it, so, sometimes people just say, "Oh, just ignore." I'm like, I can ignore, but I would let this person go with this misinformation, and
Yeah,
it will bother me. So
yeah,
I mean, just going back to something again. One of my
yeah,
experiences was when I used to go for tacos with my friends, Taco Bell,
yeah.
and one time I was with a Colombian friend, and we were eating tacos, and I didn't really like the tacos with the raw vegetables, so I had to put mayonnaise because in as a Nigerian, if I'm eating lettuce, I can't eat lettuce and all those things raw. I want
Yeah.
mayo. I want mayo in it. So you won't believe this girl got angry that this is not how you eat it. That if it's how they were supposed to eat it, they'll put mayonnaise in it. No mayo. Eat the vegetables with the meat and everything like that. I'm like, I'm not enjoying this thing. But the mayo It's even there. It's in the Taco Bell. It's there. They made it available. So it's not like I bought mayo from my home. So them making it available there means, anything they make available, be it vinegar, be it salt, be it pepper,
Yeah,
it
you
means
can use it.
you're free to add it to your food. Because if it was not supposed to be there, it won't be there. You understand? So, but this person was whatever. Just you could tell this person was irritated by me adding mayo to my tacos because that's not how they eat it. And I mean, honestly, I didn't care. I think in a way till now it still extends. Like a lot of times people can make their noise. Oh, don't add onions inside this soup. I'm like the way I was raised. When my mother is boiling meat for soup, she adds onion, and I like that flavor profile too as well. I'm not putting the onions inside the soup when I'm making, but when I'm boiling the meat, I like that onion, pepper
Yeah,
flavor
me too.
infusing it
Actually,
in it.
yeah, me too. Like me
Yeah,
too. A
but
lot
people
actually.
people fought me one time for it. And honestly, I didn't care till today. I still do it. If at all, I just don't want anyone. I won't show that part in my video. Sometimes I'll still show it. Like I don't care. Like you know, it's just what it
Okay,
is.
so we're gonna start rounding up now. But
Okay.
I want if there was one meal, like so let's make a hypothetical scenario. They say, Izunna, I want you to introduce Nigerian cuisine to Canada through a single meal, a single plate. Which would you choose?
Yeah, that's a tough question.
And just to add, you're allowed to add stuff to it, so you can make it your own actually. But just like, which would you choose, and how would you show up?
Interesting question. I think jollof has been overly exported.
Yeah, no,
In fact,
jollof
at
is
this point, I'm beefing people that always portray jollof as almost like the only Nigerian food we have. Stop talking
yeah,
about jollof. It's enough. Talk about something
yeah,
else. Egusi had his revival through TikTok.
yeah.
Fantastic phase. I loved every bit of that. But what Nigerian dish would I present to Canada or to the foreign audience? Nigerian profile dish. Recently, very, very recently, I thought about abacha.
You're in the spirit.
I thought about abacha. And you know what I thought about abacha? I was describing it to somebody, and my conviction to this person was that it's just as simple as sushi, right? What makes sushi is not just the rice wrapped in seaweed. That alone is very simple. But it's when you dip it in the soy sauce and when you have it with a bit of the salmon or the crispy onions and things like that, and the way it just comes together in your mouth is that's what if you're eating the abacha alone, it has taste and flavor. But what really elevates it is the bits of fish, peppered fish, onions, or whatever they add extra to it, or the garnishing. It just comes together. It's very simple, but it's so enjoyable because of how simple it is. And that's what I always try to tell people sometimes. Overly seasoning your food is not always the way to go. Sometimes the simplicity of the dish makes it so good. And that's why I think abacha is one really excellent example because the flavor profile is very subtle. It's just simple. It's just there. It's just the
Yeah,
texture and the other things you add to it, the
and it
additions that
stands out.
it stands out. So I think abacha will be something. I'm not very secure if the foreign audience will love it, but I like it and I think about it as a very simple dish. So on that grounds, that's what I'll present for now. But I know during my cooking and all those other explorations, I have seen other things. Another one I'll bring again is the native rice. People call it native
Which one?
jollof, but it's not. There's no jollof in it. You don't really use tomato
Oh,
for it
that
like
like
that.
that native one that they put fish and stuff in
Fish, yeah.
it.
You can even add seafood inside. You can add prawns. You can add anything. It's very similar to in the way it looks. Looks very similar to paella, the Spanish dish where they put rice and seafood and all those things. But
Mm-hmm.
native rice is also very simple, but it's very much accommodated with a very seafood base, like the crayfish you're adding, the peppers and the seafood or the prawns, all those things you add inside is really what when I was a kid, we used to call it concussion rice. We just always call it that because they're just a mix of different things. But it was
Yeah.
so good. Anytime they were cooking it, best believe we used to clear our plates. So if there was another dish too as well, I was thinking that would be another one because it's very authentic. It's very I don't know how to put it. It's very is it indigenous, ingenious. Like there's
Yeah,
just a way.
I think also the good thing about this choice is that probably what beats where it will beat abacha is that because of the seafood in it, or
Mm,
because of the fish and stuff in it, it means that it's easier for someone who doesn't know that flavor to get into it.
yes,
Unlike abacha, all the spices and everything are very different. So they're not exactly overpowering
yes,
flavors, but they're so different that it's going to, like, when you take it, like if you take well made abacha, it will shock you if you've not had it before. You'll be like, "What's this?" Like,
yes,
like you're going to be like, what did I just eat?" With the sea native rice one, because of the fish and all those things,
yeah,
it would allow you to get into it
yes, into yeah,
and
yeah.
slowly be like, "Oh, okay, okay, I can try this again." With the abacha, you're going to sit down and be like, "Wait, to make una hold on with this
I
one."
just thought of another one. I
Which
just
has
thought of
that?
another one. It's like a potato porridge or yam porridge.
Which of the
But
yam porridges?
I
The
think I'll mix
vegetable
it
yam
with.
porridge one?
It could be with a bit of scent leaf or basil,
Ah, ah,
right? Topped with smoked salmon,
ah. Well, yeah,
right? A Canadian,
boy, they cook. Oh.
yeah, a Canadian crowd will love it.
Yeah.
I know I can
Uh,
sell that one. I know
yeah,
definitely. I know
yeah,
if I top it up with
honestly.
a chunk of smoked salmon, a bowl of that porridge with smoked salmon on top. Promise you, this is fine dining. This is Nigerian fine dining right there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it's interesting how food becomes like, how we see a people or something like. And then I think my last question for you is, and you've talked a bit about this, but just kind of, I want you to kind of explore it a bit more. When you think about how you've shared your Nigerian food with non-Nigerians and how they've reacted to it, like, are there any lessons, takeaways, or how it has or has it changed how your perspective on our own culinary heritage or flavor profiles? Like, how has it shaped how you see our food now in the past?
One thing I think it has done for me definitely to see how non-Nigerians interact with Nigerian food, Nigerian recipes, is to actually give you a sense of like, you know, our food has traveled more than we've recognized. Because
Mm,
growing up, you just think Nigerian food was definitely only being eaten by Nigerians. And even when I was able to travel abroad, I wasn't seeing an acceptance of Nigerian food. Jamaican food had this rep abroad. Thai food, Indian food, everybody had its own, But Nigerian food basically had no space. Nobody, even when I first arrived to you, nobody was talking about jollof. Really,
yeah.
it was gradually now being
Yeah,
brought into the
it's the
conversation
past
somehow.
5 years or so that Jollof has
Yeah,
had
yeah.
this run. The past 5 years, yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't, really that exported like that. So when I see people ask me, when I see a a Western account, a white person say, please post the Ikusi recipe on TikTok. I'm
Are
just
you
like,
serious?
yeah, it happens. Yeah, very, very often. Things like that. A stew. They're asking for stew. They're asking for, you know, because they see these things on TikTok too, and they maybe they've bought it before and they liked it, you know.
Yeah.
So they're asking for how can you make it? How can they make it? And there's a trust that being a Nigerian creator, I will show them the authentic way to make it, right? And I'm also a creator that, in my own way, I still appeal to those audience because of, maybe the way I talk, the quality of my videos, perhaps. All those things still is very much consumable by them, which
Hmm.
I put in mind, really. Um, but yeah, I feel like there was a second part I wanted to touch, but I can't remember what that was. Yeah, what's the
While
question
you're
again? Let
while
me
you're
see.
while you're trying to remember, like, I'll just say
Okay.
something. Just what you reminded me about this thing you said about people just calling, just asking you those questions. Is my friend did this thing earlier this year called Suyaji in Calgary here.
Yeah.
It's a Suya festival. It's just small one, random place in the park and all that. People came, but what I found interesting was people around the area, because they were grilling suya there, perceived the flavor of the food, came down,
Kingdom.
bought the food. went back, came back again, and we're like, can I buy another one? you know,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and I was like, that says a lot about. So it kind of relates to what you said about how the food is growing. Like
The food is growing. The food is good.
it's growing. It's
The
growing.
food is good. That's one thing I'll tell you for sure. Our food is good. Like, um, when I taste some of these dishes or cuisines that are very widely acceptable, I still taste some. I go back to UK again, and I'll say at the Chinese restaurants. One time I had Chinese takeaways. I used to always buy Chinese curry sauce as a dip
Hmm?
for my chips or whatever I bought, and this thing always tastes like banga or ofaku.
Are you
Somehow,
serious?
yes. I think that was just in the UK then. I don't know about. I've not really tried it here in Canada, but then I always do, and I wish there was anybody who was familiar with that taste I could give it to and taste it for me and confirm if it's not just in my head.
Oh,
You
that's
know,
interesting.
it was always that way. So I always felt like that. And then someone goes to Mexico and they taste this potato dish and it tastes like porridge. You know, or just the how we eat spaghetti and pasta is still based in tomato sauce so all these dishes that are already widely acceptable, we do already have different variations or different similar taste levels or flavor profiles to them. But I feel like generally Nigerians were probably insecure to bring our food forward because we do not know how these people are going to perceive it. And that's why when you see Nigerians being excited that foreigners tried our food and liked it, people are like, okay, what if they like it? You know, are they ever excited that I like their own food? And I'm like, you can't be like that because generally we haven't ever experienced our food being accepted
Yeah.
worldwide. So when we see foreigners, when we see a video of maybe Mexican moms trying Nigerian food and they're like, oh, I like this. Oh, this tastes like, if you told me this was Mexican rice, I will believe you. Or if you told me,
Yeah.
oh, I like this, a bit chewy, but I like it.
Yeah.
Things like that. So when you see Nigerians excited about it, I think don't 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 try to change it. It's okay for people to be excited because we've never. It's the same thing that happens to Afrobeats too as well. When we see our music
Yeah.
now being accepted or being played, we're excited because we never thought our music was marketable. We never thought it
Yeah.
was going to be that acceptable, but we liked it, we enjoyed it, and now
Yeah.
we're seeing it being accepted. It's okay to celebrate that.
Yeah. Agree. Totally
Yeah,
agree.
yeah,
Totally agree
absolutely.
on that.
Yeah. Yeah, I can't remember the other thing I was thinking anyway,
Oh,
but I
that's
think
okay.
I've
That's
covered
okay.
something good so far. Yeah.
That's okay. That's okay, Izunna. Honestly, that's okay. I mean, so I think we're going to round up now, and the last question I'll just probably ask you is, we do this thing a lot in Nigeria where we do communal eating.
Yeah.
Bring everybody. Do you do that here too?
I've been thinking about it. But the cost is different.
I feel you on that.
Yeah, yeah. The cost is the whole bag because it's like cost and space. You know,
Mm,
cost
mm.
and space is something to consider. If you want to really host people, I don't live in a space where I can host a lot of
Oh
people. I mean,
yeah,
I do have friends where I could actually maybe borrow that space to do that, but it comes with a lot of effort from your side. And
yeah,
I think in previous years it would have been probably more possible because of the economy was more favorable to do that. Because I was seeing a lot of
yeah,
people doing that, hosting and cooking and hosting everybody and hosting.
yeah.
But this year, a lot of people are not really doing that because the economy is not smiling.
Economy is not smiling at all, my
So,
brother.
I've not
Those
been invited to any
parties.
any
No,
yeah.
everyone's
Everybody's
like
just
this
holding
now.
themselves. So I
Nah.
can't, I can't be the one to just spring out and just do it like that when I know it's going to come at a very, very uncomfortable cost. So when there is an opportunity, when I am blessed enough to just do it conveniently, honestly, why not? So yeah, that's something I'm also thinking of doing, but um, probably it should be a situation where it's actually paid, where other people
Yeah,
who
yeah, it
want
has
to,
to be. I think I
yeah.
was actually thinking of it like paid actually. Like it has to be paid. It can't be free. I don't think that you do all that cooking and then bring people to a space and they pay for the food. I mean, there's all the legal stuff to get to do and
Yes,
all that because
yes,
apparently, yeah,
absolutely.
there's
Because people say, "Why haven't you started?" I'm just like, I'm not in a I won't throw Nigeria under the bus here, but everything it doesn't everything doesn't go here. You need to.
no, everything
There's
doesn't go.
paperwork involved.
Yeah, there is paperwork involved, and you
So
have to because if you cook that food and someone falls sick, you're in trouble. Like you're
you're in
in serious
trouble.
trouble, and you don't want that for yourself.
Exactly. So, there is things are in a certain way here. Things are done orderly. So when I have that opportunity and when I have that time to actually take on those things, for now there's no pressure on me to do it. It's not my what's it called source of income, but it's
Yeah.
in the future I intend for it to be also somehow a source of income. But for now, I'm still building, let's say, a base that will allow that. That's in the plans eventually. So, but nobody should pressure me.
I go pressure you.
I mean, they're already pressuring me, so there's nothing I can do about it. Anytime I'm outside, anytime anyone who recognizes me, and people do recognize me very often, but every time I'm outside in, a space where a lot of people can recognize me, time after one after the other, they're asking me when I'm going to cook and invite them. I have to keep a rooster at this point. Because I always tell people, okay, one day, but you know what? They come back to me once and they're like, "You invited me. You say you invited me. What happened?" I'm like, "I don't remember you." Yeah, but yeah. Anyway, but eventually, hopefully, I can keep as many people happy. Eventually, when I'm ready to
To do it.
commercialize it, I'll use that. Yeah,
Thank you so much, man. This was really good. Honestly, like it was way better. Like I knew it was gonna be good, but I didn't
yeah,
know it was gonna be this good.
yeah. I loved it, and your questions are really good as well. You really just
Thanks a
allowed me
bunch.
to answer as freely as possible.
I hope you enjoyed that episode because I did. I mean, it was fun talking to him. I especially liked when we were exploring that point about what meal would you pick if you were trying to introduce the Nigerian cuisine to a global audience or to a Canadian audience. But as always, as I always say, please like, share, subscribe. We're on Substack, we're on YouTube, we're on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Please share with people who might find this useful or interesting. And if you know someone like Izunna who we should talk to, please send them our way.